Deep in the Amazon jungle lies a secret older than time itself, a city of gold, guarded by whispers and shadows. Few have dared to seek it, none returned unchanged. Night draped itself over the Brazilian coast like a curtain of black velvet. On the horizon, the Amazon River shimmered beneath the moonlight, a silver serpent winding its way through an endless ocean of green shadows. The sounds of the wild filled the darkness, shrill cries of unseen birds, the ceaseless hum of insects, the distant roar of a jaguar prowling its domain. This was not a land ruled by men. Here, the jungle was sovereign, ancient, and unyielding. At the docks of Manaus, lanterns flickered weakly against the suffocating night. Traders moved hurriedly, whirling crates of rubber and coffee, while riverboats rocked lazily against the current. Amidst the clamor stood a man in a weathered hat, his tall frame stiff with purpose. His name was Percy Fawcett, soldier, cartographer, and dreamer. His gaze never lingered on the merchants or the cargo. Instead, it pierced the black wall of the jungle beyond the river, his eyes burning with obsession. In his hands rested a leather-bound journal, pages swollen with sketches of symbols, cryptic notes, and half-forgotten maps. Legends called it the City of Zed, a lost civilization buried deep in the heart of darkness, a place of immense wealth and mysteries untold. Scholars dismissed it as myth. Others laughed, branding him mad. But Percy's belief was unshakable. Zed, he whispered, the word rolling from his lips like an incantation. The key to history itself, waiting to be found. The night breeze carried with it the heavy scent of earth and rain, tinged with something older, something that smelled like time itself. Local guides shifted uneasily, refusing to meet his stare. They knew the stories passed down through generations, whispers of cursed lands where the forest devoured intruders, where invisible guardians stalked trespassers until they vanished without a trace. But Percy Fawcett was not a man who bowed to curses. He trusted in courage, endurance, and destiny. And as the river lapped hungrily at the shore, he vowed that he would succeed where all others had failed. The jungle listened in silence. Somewhere in its depths, it seemed to stir, as if it already knew how his story would end. The morning broke with a crimson sun rising above the river, painting the waters with fire. Mist clung to the jungle like a veil, and the trees loomed as if they were giant sentinels standing guard over an ancient world. Percy Fawcett stood at the bow of a narrow riverboat, his boots damp from the dew, his journal pressed tightly against his chest. Behind him, crates of supplies rattled, and his companions busied themselves with ropes, rifles, and provisions for a journey no map could properly describe. The river narrowed as the boat pressed forward, its current slower, more treacherous. The air grew thick, heavy with the perfume of orchids and the musk of decay. Enormous butterflies fluttered in dazzling blues and fiery reds, yet above them circled carrion birds, black and ominous, as if mocking the bright colors below. "Here the jungle begins to swallow all," muttered one of the guides, a wiry man with scarred arms and eyes that flicked nervously to the trees. He made the sign of the cross as the foliage closed in overhead, casting the river into a twilight gloom. Percy, however, felt only exhilaration. The air itself seemed alive, buzzing with secrets. "Every vine hides a story," he said aloud, half to his men, half to the shadows. "Every stone may mark a road once walked by kings." Yet even as he spoke, a silence fell over the forest, sudden and unnatural. The chorus of insects ceased, the parrots vanished from the canopy, and the river became eerily still. Only the steady thunk-thunk of the oars remained. His men shifted uneasily, their hands straying to the rifles stacked at their feet. Then, from deep within the emerald gloom, came a sound, not the roar of a beast, not the rustle of wind, but something more elusive. A whisper. Like voices carried by the leaves, syllables too faint to be understood, yet unmistakably human. The jungle was speaking. Fawcett's eyes shone with a mix of awe and defiance. "Do you hear it?" he asked softly. "The forest remembers." And with those words, the expedition slipped deeper into the green abyss, where light faltered and legends waited. By the third day, the river had narrowed into a twisting green corridor, hemmed in by walls of tangled vines and towering sabre trees whose roots clawed into the earth like the fingers of giants. Sunlight barely pierced the canopy. What little glow reached them shimmered in broken shafts, turning the river into a ribbon of gold and shadow. The air was suffocating, thick with the scent of wet soil and rotting vegetation. Every breath felt heavy, as though the jungle itself pressed down upon their lungs. The men rode in silence, sweat streaming from their brows, eyes darting at every rustle in the undergrowth. Once, a massive anaconda slid from a branch into the water, its coils vanishing with barely a ripple. Another time, red howler monkeys shrieked from the treetops, their cries echoing like the laughter of unseen spirits. Yet the greatest menace was not fang or claw, but the fever that bloomed unseen in the air. By evening, one of the younger porters staggered, his skin slick with sweat though the night air was cool. His lips trembled with muttered words in a dialect even his companions did not recognize. Percy knelt beside him, pressing a damp cloth to his forehead, but the man's eyes rolled back, staring at visions none could see. The guides exchanged worried glances. "It begins," one whispered. "A forest chooses who may walk her paths." That night the rains came, torrents so fierce they turned the camp into a mire of mud and black water. Thunder cracked across the heavens as if the gods themselves waged war above. Lightning illuminated the jungle in stark flashes, the silhouettes of colossal trees, the gleam of 100 unseen eyes watching from the dark. Yet Percy Fawcett sat unmoved by the storm. Wrapped in his cloak, journal balanced on his knees, he sketched symbols into the pages, his hand steady despite the thunder. "Every trial," he murmured, "is a test. And beyond the test lies the truth." The jungle roared in defiance, as if to remind him, truth here is never given, only taken, and at a cost. When dawn finally broke, the storm had left the world transformed. The river was swollen, its banks clawed away by the night's fury, and the jungle floor steamed as though the earth itself breathed. The men, weary and mud-streaked, pushed deeper inland, abandoning their boats where the current had grown too violent to tame. Now they marched on foot, hacking a path with machetes through curtains of vines that dripped with rain like liquid emeralds. It was then that the first signs appeared, marks not of beast nor weather, but of human hands. On the side of a moss-covered boulder, they found carvings, spirals, jagged lines, and figures etched into the stone, their meaning lost to time. The symbols were faint, nearly erased by centuries of rain, yet still pulsed with an aura of deliberate design. The guides recoiled instantly. One spat into the earth and muttered a prayer. "We should not be here," he hissed. "These are the warnings of the ancients. They tell us to turn back." But Percy's eyes burned brighter than ever. He traced the spiral with his fingertips, the moss damp and cool beneath his hand. "Warnings," he whispered, "or invitations. The deeper they pressed, the stranger the signs became. Trees bore scars that were too precise to be natural, slashed lines arranged in patterns. Stones lay arranged in unnatural circles, as though they once formed the foundations of vanished dwellings. At one clearing, they found shards of pottery, blackened as if by fire, half buried in the soil. At night, by the flickering firelight, the men swore they heard drums echoing faintly through the trees. Low, steady beats that carried no source, vanishing whenever someone strained to listen. Some said it was the storm rolling away. Others, with faces pale and drawn, muttered of spirits. But Percy wrote furiously in his journal, his hand unshaken. "These are the echoes of a forgotten people," he declared. "We are close. Closer than any who came before." Above, the moon slipped behind a veil of clouds, and in the silence between the jungle's cries, it seemed the earth itself was holding its breath. The deeper they ventured, the heavier the silence grew. It was not the stillness of peace, but of something unseen, crouched and waiting. Each step forward seemed to awaken the jungle in strange, unsettling ways, the flutter of wings just beyond sight, the snap of a branch where no wind blew, the shimmer of eyes that vanished when the torches turned their way. The porters whispered among themselves at night, their voices trembling like children speaking of monsters in the dark. They spoke of the Curupira, the red-haired guardian of the forest whose feet faced backwards, a trickster who led hunters astray until they vanished forever. Others claimed it was no spirit but the living descendants of an ancient tribe, protectors of the lost city who allowed no outsider to leave alive. Percy Fawcett dismissed their fears with the iron calm of a commander, but even he could not ignore the signs. A length of rope vanished from the supplies. A sack of dried meat was found torn open, though no animal tracks surrounded it. One morning, their path was blocked by sharpened stakes, planted in the earth with deliberate care, as if to say, "Turn back. Someone watches us," muttered Rarley, one of Percy's closest companions, his rifle never far from his grip. "They're letting us know we trespass." But Percy, eyes alight with defiance, shook his head. "If they watch, then they know the truth as well, that we come not as invaders, but as seekers." He closed his journal and stood tall, his shadow long against the firelight. "A great discovery lies ahead, and no unseen hand will turn me from it." Yet that night, as the men drifted into uneasy slumber, the forest revealed its verdict. From the canopy above, a flicker of movement, silent, deliberate, passed from branch to branch. An arrow, feathered with bright jungle plumage, landed in the dirt mere steps from Percy's bedroll. It quivered in the firelight, humming with an unspoken warning. No one dared breathe. The jungle was not merely watching. It was answering. Dawn broke pale and uncertain, the jungle veiled in mist that curled like smoke among the towering trunks. The arrow from the night before still lay where it had struck, its feathers damp with dew. None of the men dared touch it. To them, it was more than a weapon. It was a message, carved in silence. Around the smoldering embers of their fire, voices rose in a fragile chorus of doubt. The porters demanded they turn back, their eyes wide with fear. One of the guides spat bitterly into the earth. "You do not understand," he said. "These lands are forbidden. They belong to those who came before us, and they still walk here, unseen." Rarley, the loyal lieutenant, stood with his rifle across his chest. "The men are right," he said quietly to Percy. "This is no ordinary expedition. We're being stalked. We should retreat, regroup, and return with greater numbers. But Percy's face remained carved from stone. He held his journal close, its pages heavy with scribbled symbols and crude maps. If we turn back now, we surrender to shadows, he said firmly. All of history's greatest discoveries were born from defying fear. The city lies ahead. I can feel it. These signs, these carvings, these warnings, they are proof, not deterrence. His voice, steady as iron, bent the men's resolve. Some lowered their heads in reluctant obedience, others scowled in silence, but all shouldered their packs when Percy rose and pressed forward into the mist. The jungle seemed to shift with them, the air thickening, the path narrowing. Vines clutched at their clothes, roots twisted beneath their feet, as if the forest itself sought to ensnare them. Birds burst suddenly from the canopy, their cries like shrieks of alarm. And then, stillness again. Not the calm of nature, but the hush of an unseen audience. Each man felt it in his bones. They had crossed an invisible line. The territory behind them belonged to the jungle. The territory ahead belonged to something else. Percy smiled grimly. "We are close," he whispered. But in the silence, even the trees seemed to listen. By midday, the sun burned through the mist, and the jungle glistened as though forged of emerald and fire. The air pulsed with heat, heavy with the smell of orchids and damp earth. The men pressed on, hacking through curtains of vines, their clothes clinging wet with sweat. And then, without warning, the forest seemed to open its hand. They stepped into a clearing unlike any they had yet seen. The ground sloped downward into a hollow, and there, half buried beneath centuries of soil and strangling roots, rose the unmistakable lines of carved stone. Blocks of granite, worn smooth by time, jutted from the earth at strange angles. Vines wrapped around them like serpents, while moss painted them green with age. The porters froze, their machetes still mid-swing. One of the guides fell to his knees, pressing his forehead into the soil as though before a shrine. "The old ones," he whispered, his voice trembling. "Their houses still stand." Percy dropped to the stones, brushing away the moss with eager hands. Beneath the damp growth, he uncovered carvings, spirals, jagged symbols, and the crude outlines of figures locked in dance or battle. His fingers trembled as he traced their forms. "This is no accident," he breathed. "This is architecture. Proof of a people advanced beyond the tribes we know." Rarely crouched beside him, his face half-shadowed by doubt. "Or proof of a warning left for fools like us." The men whispered nervously as the wind swept through the clearing, carrying with it a low, mournful moan that seemed to rise from the stones themselves. Whether it was the wind, or something older, none could say. That night they camped among the ruins, the firelight casting restless shadows across the broken walls. The carvings seemed to shift in the flickering glow, figures bending and twisting, as though alive. Some men swore they heard footsteps in the dark beyond the fire's edge. Others claimed the roots themselves were moving, tightening slowly around the stones like a hand reclaiming what had been stolen. But Percy, with eyes gleaming like a zealot's, smiled at the darkness. "We are standing at the threshold," he said. "And tomorrow, the jungle will show us more." Above them, the stars blinked faintly through the canopy, watching as the ancient city stirred in its sleep. The following dawn broke with a muted gold, sunlight filtering in slivers through the dense canopy. Mist clung stubbornly to the ruins, curling like spectral fingers around stone pillars. Percy and his team descended deeper into the hollow, following a path partially hidden beneath the thick tangle of roots and vines. Each step revealed more of the city, terraces carved into the hillside, walls etched with patterns that seemed almost alive, and stairs disappearing into dark tunnels beneath the earth. Rarley's boots kicked aside fallen leaves, revealing intricate mosaics half-swallowed by moss. The shapes depicted scenes of battle and ritual, strange masks and animals, figures holding staffs or offering unknown gifts. It was as if an entire civilization had been frozen mid-motion, a tableau of a people who had vanished overnight. Then came the first truly unsettling sign, a doorway, perfectly intact, yet no footprints led to it. No tracks of animals, no marks of wind or water. It was as though the entrance had been waiting for them. The stone around it was polished smooth, and faint symbols glowed under Percy's torchlight, revealing a pattern almost too deliberate to be natural. A shiver ran through the men. One of the porters whispered, "If this is sacred, or cursed." Percy pressed forward, journal in hand. He traced the carvings carefully. "It's a message," he said softly. "A warning, perhaps, but also a guide. Whoever lived here wanted someone to find it. Someone brave enough." The jungle seemed to hold its breath. The distant call of birds ceased, replaced by a faint whispering, like voices carried from deep beneath the stone floors. The team froze. No wind could have carried such sound. It was human, yet not entirely, voices in a language long dead, or a song meant only for the walls themselves. Despite the unease, Percy's determination flared brighter. "The city is not empty," he said. "Its inhabitants may be gone, but their legacy, it waits for us." A shadow moved across the inner courtyard, flickering in the torchlight, vanishing before any of them could point it out. A subtle, chilling message that they were not alone, and that the jungle's secrets were far older and stranger than they could have imagined. The following day, the jungle seemed to shift with a subtle malevolence. Paths they had walked without issue now twisted unexpectedly. Vines that were once pliant clawed at their clothing, snagging packs and ropes. Even the river, now a faint trickle in this hollow, hissed over hidden stones, as if warning them away. Each man felt it, the oppressive gaze of the city, unseen but palpably present, as if the ruins themselves were alive. Percy pressed forward, journal in hand, tracing the carvings with reverent fascination. "Every symbol, every stone, it is all a test," he murmured. "The city will allow passage only to those who can endure." And the city began its trial. First came the whispers, faint at first, then louder, threading through the leaves, curling around their ears, carrying half-formed words in a language that had not been spoken for centuries. Some men clutched their heads, trying to block the sound, but it penetrated their very thoughts. Sleep-deprived and trembling, they saw figures in the periphery, glimpses of motion that vanished whenever they tried to focus. Shadows moved against the walls, yet none of the men were near. Then the ground betrayed them. Sections of stone terraces shifted as if alive, steps tilting underfoot. One of the porters nearly fell into a hidden pit, a shadowy abyss that swallowed the light of his torch. He scrambled back, pale and shaking, muttering prayers in a dialect none of the others understood. At midday, a sudden, eerie silence fell. The air was still, thick with anticipation. Then, from the canopy above, a single, piercing cry, the screech of a jaguar or something far stranger. The men froze. Every instinct screamed danger. The city seemed to lean closer, holding its breath. Percy, undeterred, ran his hand over a massive stone slab etched with spirals. "These trials, they are part of the city itself," he said, voice firm. "It tests resolve, courage, the strength to seek truth." As the sun sank, casting long, jagged shadows over the ruins, the men camped uneasily among the ancient stones. Eyes flickered in the darkness, and even the bravest felt a chill, as though the lost inhabitants, or something older still, were watching, waiting to see who would endure. The city had begun to speak. As dawn broke, mist curled like ghostly serpents across the ruins. The men, weary but unbroken, pressed forward into a part of the city unlike any they had seen. Here, the jungle's chokehold had loosened, revealing a courtyard framed by massive stone columns carved with figures that seemed to move in the flickering light of their torches. Vines clung to them like emerald flames, yet the structure itself had survived centuries intact. Percy stepped forward, ore written across his face. This is a sanctuary," he whispered. "A place of power, of memory, preserved for us to find." The courtyard floor was a mosaic of colored stones, depicting scenes of people dancing, feasting, and performing rituals under spiraling suns and crescent moons. Some tiles bore the images of serpents coiled around humans, their eyes inlaid with tiny bits of gold. The sunlight that broke through the canopy caught on them, causing the figures to gleam like living creatures. Rarley ran his hands over one of the columns, tracing intricate symbols that seemed to shimmer under his fingers. "It's incredible," he breathed. "These people, they were masters of something beyond our understanding." Yet the sanctuary held a sense of foreboding. Shadows moved unnaturally along the walls, stretching and bending as if the city itself were alive. From deep within, a low hum began, resonating through the stone floors, vibrating in their chests. It was neither wind nor animal. It was deliberate, controlled. Suddenly, a stone door, hidden among the columns, shifted with a groan. The men froze. From the darkness beyond came a faint, pulsating light, almost as if the heart of the city was beating, waiting to reveal its secrets. Percy's eyes gleamed with determination. "This is it," he said, voice steady despite the growing dread. "The city wants us to see, to learn, to survive what comes next." And as they stepped closer, the jungle around the sanctuary seemed to retreat, leaving the explorers alone with the whispers, the carvings, and the first real evidence that the lost CityZ had not simply vanished, it had been waiting. Stepping through the stone doorway, the air changed. The jungle's humid scent was replaced by a faint, metallic tang, as if the stones themselves held centuries of secrets. The interior of the sanctuary was vast, impossibly high, with walls covered in carvings that depicted stories of rulers, warriors, and creatures half human, half animal. Each image seemed to move in the flickering light of the torches, shifting subtly when viewed from the corner of an eye. Percy ran his fingers along a bas-relief of a colossal serpent coiling around a sun disk. "These people," he whispered, "they worshipped forces we cannot yet understand. Knowledge and power, bound in stone." Rarley shivered. "Or perhaps warnings," he said. "Look at the eyes of these figures. They watch us, even now." The team explored carefully, discovering a series of chambers branching off from the main hall. In one, they found pottery filled with strange powders and dried herbs. In another, ceremonial masks, their expressions frozen in grimaces of ecstasy or terror. Every artifact hinted at rituals designed to reach beyond the ordinary, perhaps even to control unseen forces. Then came the first unmistakable sign of a hidden threat: deep scratches in the stone floor, wide and deliberate, unlike any natural crack. They formed a pattern, a path leading to a stairwell spiraling downward. A chill ran through the men, and even the guides, normally unflappable, took a cautious step back. Percy's hand rested on the worn stone railing. "The city tests us," he said, eyes alight with a feverish excitement. "It wants to see who is worthy. Those who follow the path may find its greatest secret, or its deadliest." A low hum began beneath their feet, resonating through the stone as though the city itself were alive. The light flickered across the walls, and for a brief instant, the carvings appeared to twist and twist again, forming symbols not seen before. The explorers exchanged tense glances. The sanctuary was no mere ruin. It was a living monument, holding both knowledge and danger in equal measure. Percy swallowed hard. "We descend," he said, voice steady. "There is no turning back now." And with that, the team began their cautious journey downward into the hidden depths of a civilization lost to time, where shadows promised both discovery and peril. The stairwell spiraled deep into the earth, carved from the living rock of the hill, slick with centuries of damp. Each step echoed, a hollow drumbeat that seemed to awaken something ancient beneath the city. Torches flickered, casting dancing shadows across walls etched with cryptic symbols, spirals intertwined with figures that shifted in the corner of the eye. A sudden chill swept through the narrow passage. The men shivered. The air itself felt alive, pressing against their lungs. Then it happened, a movement in the darkness, fleeting but unmistakable. A shadow detached itself from the wall, elongated and fluid, as if made of smoke and memory. It glided along the corridor without sound, passing through columns and stones, vanishing whenever anyone dared to focus directly on it. One of the porters, pale and trembling, whispered a prayer in a language long forgotten. Rarely gripped his rifle, though he too knew that no weapon of man could confront what they were seeing. Percy's eyes narrowed, a mixture of awe and determination burning in his gaze. This is the city's warning," he said softly. "It tests our courage. It shows us that we are not alone, that we walk in the shadow of a power older than any record of men." The shadow paused near a carved relief of a serpent coiled around a human figure. Its form shimmered, and in the brief flicker of torchlight, it seemed to lean closer, watching, judging. One of the guides stumbled backward, muttering about the spirits of the ancients and the folly of trespassing. Yet Percy pressed forward, hand brushing against the cool stone walls. Every symbol, every groove, every whisper of wind carried a message he could almost understand. Knowledge was here, hidden and guarded by forces beyond comprehension. To retreat would mean leaving the city's secret undiscovered forever. As the stairwell opened into a vast underground chamber, the shadow lingered at the threshold, disappearing only when Percy stepped into the center. The walls of the chamber pulsed with faint, ethereal light, illuminating murals that depicted ceremonies, celestial alignments, and beings of impossible form. In the stillness, Percy whispered, almost to himself, "The city is alive, and it has chosen to reveal itself to us." But somewhere in the darkness, the shadow moved again, silent and patient, waiting for the explorers to prove their worth, or succumb to the city's ancient guardians. The underground chamber stretched wider than any of them could have imagined, its ceiling lost in shadows, walls carved with scenes older than memory. Every surface was etched with spirals, glyphs, and figures locked in motion, warriors, beasts, and beings half human, half divine. Faint light seeped from cracks in the stones above, illuminating golden inlays that glimmered like trapped sunlight. Percy stepped forward, eyes wide with reverence. This is the heart of the city," he murmured. "Everything else we've seen is but an entrance. Here lies the soul." At the center of the chamber was a raised dais, upon which rested objects that seemed impossibly preserved. Ceremonial masks with eyes of obsidian stared blankly, golden scepters twisted with carvings of serpents, and a collection of intricately woven scrolls bound in leather aged to blackness. Symbols of celestial bodies adorned the edges, hinting at knowledge of the stars, the seasons, and perhaps powers lost to humankind. Rarely approached cautiously, lifting a mask with trembling hands. The instant he touched it, a vibration ran through the chamber. Dust and loose stones shivered, and the faint glow along the walls intensified, illuminating hidden symbols that had gone unnoticed. The shadows seemed to stretch, shifting across the carvings as though alive. One of the guides fell to his knees, muttering, "These objects are not just relics, they are guardians. They will punish the unworthy." But Percy's gaze was fixed. Every fiber of his being screamed that discovery and danger walked hand in hand. "We are worthy," he said firmly. "We have endured the jungle, the trials, the shadows. And now, the city speaks to us directly." As they explored, faint whispers threaded through the chamber, curling around their minds. The glyphs appeared to pulse in rhythm with the whispers, revealing patterns, sequences, and warnings. One wrong step, one careless touch, could awaken forces beyond comprehension. Yet the allure of knowledge, of the civilization lost to time, drew them forward with irresistible force. Above, the jungle hummed faintly, as if aware of every heartbeat below. The city, though buried and forgotten for centuries, had not abandoned its power. It was awake. And the explorers had crossed the threshold into a world where curiosity was survival, and survival demanded courage beyond mortal measure. The chamber seemed to breathe. Every carved stone, every golden inlay, pulsed faintly, as though the city itself had sensed the explorer's presence. Shadows danced unnaturally along the walls, coiling and stretching, forming shapes that were almost, but not quite, human. The whispers grew louder, a chorus of voices that seemed to echo from centuries past, urging, warning, beckoning. Percy approached the central dais, his fingers hovering over an intricately carved tablet. Strange symbols shimmered beneath his touch, glowing with an inner light that danced like liquid fire. As he traced the patterns, the ground beneath them trembled softly, a heartbeat of stone and memory that reverberated through their bones. Suddenly, a low hum filled the chamber, rising to a resonance that made the men stagger. The golden inlays on the walls shimmered brighter, casting reflections that merged and shifted into forms of figures they could almost recognize: priests, warriors, citizens, frozen mid-ritual, yet somehow moving in a spectral dance. Rarely swallowed hard, voice barely audible. "It's or alive. The city or it watches." Percy's eyes burned with obsession. Not watching, speaking. "We are the first to hear in centuries." He reached out again, and the whispers swirled, forming patterns, almost sentences, in a language long lost. The air thickened. The torchlight flickered violently. One of the porters stumbled backward, trembling. And then, a door, hidden in plain sight along the chamber's far wall, groaned open slowly. A soft, bluish glow spilled into the chamber, illuminating a descending stairway carved from obsidian stone. From its depths came a rhythm, like the pulse of some colossal creature sleeping beneath the earth. The sound was hypnotic, magnetic, almost alive. "The heart of the city," Percy whispered. "Whatever lies below, it is the source of all this power. And it calls to us." As the explorers exchanged uneasy glances, the shadows stretched toward the stairway, as though guiding them or warning them. Every instinct screamed caution, yet every pulse of curiosity, every heartbeat of ambition, urged them forward. The jungle above seemed to hum in harmony, the wind carrying faint echoes of lost voices. Somewhere, far beyond the stone, the city's secrets waited. And the explorers were about to step into a realm where the line between legend and reality, life and shadow, would blur forever. The stairway of obsidian led them downward into darkness, so complete it seemed to swallow sound itself. Torchlight trembled in the hands of the men, casting long, quivering shadows that stretched and merged with the jagged walls. Every step echoed as if the city itself was speaking, a low vibration resonating through the stone and into their bones. At the base, the explorers entered a vast cavern, larger than any cathedral they had ever seen. The walls were carved with figures in mid-motion, warriors locked in battle, priests performing rites beneath celestial symbols, serpents winding around suns and moons. Bioluminescent fungi clung to cracks in the walls, casting a ghostly glow that made the carvings shimmer with life. In the center of the chamber rose a pedestal of polished stone, upon which sat a crystalline orb, pulsing faintly with an inner light like a heartbeat. The whispers of the city converged here, rising in pitch and intensity, harmonizing into a sound that was part voice, part wind, part memory. Percy approached, heart pounding, every nerve alive. "This," he whispered, "is the source. The secret the city has guarded for centuries. All its power, all its knowledge, rests here." Rarely stepped forward cautiously. "Or its trap," he murmured. The men glanced at one another, fear and wonder warring in their eyes. The moment Percy touched the orb, the chamber shivered. Shadows writhed and flickered, merging into forms that seemed almost tangible, spectral figures, guardians of the city, half human, half animal, eyes gleaming like embers. A cold wind swept through the cavern, carrying the scent of earth and incense, of centuries undisturbed. Yet Percy's gaze was fixed, his hands steady. "We've come too far to turn back," he said. "Knowledge demands sacrifice, and courage is its key." As the shadows circled the pedestal, whispering unintelligible words, the orb's glow intensified, filling the chamber with radiant light. The explorers stood at the threshold of discovery, where history, legend, and the supernatural converged. Whatever awaited them beyond this moment, the jungle above and the city below would forever mark their souls. The LostCityZ had revealed its heart. And it was alive. The orb's radiance filled the chamber, illuminating every carved figure and casting long, surreal shadows that seemed to move independently. The explorers felt a strange weight in the air, as if the city itself were assessing their presence. Whispers threaded through the cavern, rising and falling like an invisible tide, carrying fragments of meaning that teased comprehension. Then, from the depths of the shadows, figures began to emerge. They were unlike anything the men had ever seen, humanoid in form but adorned with serpent-like scales, feathers, and ornaments of gold that glinted in the ethereal light. Their eyes burned with intelligence, watchfulness, and something older, an awareness that transcended human understanding. One stepped forward, its voice a low, resonant hum that vibrated through the stone. "Seekers," it intoned, "why have you come?" Percy's heart raced, but he stepped forward boldly. "We come in search of knowledge," he declared. "We seek to understand the city, its people, and its legacy." The guardian tilted its head, studying him. The whispers rose to a crescendo, echoing through the chamber as if affirming or warning. "Few have entered and remained unconsumed," it said. "The city tests all who trespass. Courage alone is insufficient. Wisdom must guide the brave." Rarely swallowed hard. "And if we fail?" he asked, voice trembling. The guardian's gaze pierced him. "Failure is absorption," it said, and the air shifted, cold and heavy, carrying a sense of lives swallowed by time. Percy's gaze remained unflinching. "We will endure," he said. "We have braved the jungle, the shadows, and the trials. Knowledge is worth the cost." The guardian stepped aside, revealing a passage beyond the pedestal, leading deeper into the cavern. "Then walk forward," it intoned. "Face the final trial. Only there will the city's ultimate secret be revealed." The explorers exchanged tense glances, the enormity of the moment pressing on their hearts. Every instinct screamed caution, yet every pulse of ambition drove them onward. And as they stepped toward the hidden passage, the whispers subsided into a hush, as if the city itself were holding its breath, waiting for history to be written once more. The passage led them into a cavern so vast it seemed to stretch beyond the edges of reality. The walls glimmered with veins of quartz and gold, reflecting the orb's fading light and giving the impression that the chamber itself breathed. Shadows curled and shifted, forming shapes that were both familiar and impossible. Warriors frozen mid-stride, serpents coiled around glowing suns, and figures that seemed to watch the explorers with uncanny awareness. At the center stood an enormous stone archway, etched with symbols that pulsed faintly, as though alive. Beyond it, a faint, ethereal light beckoned, shimmering in blues and golds, casting long, dancing reflections across the cavern floor. The whispers had become a chorus, a melodic language that resonated deep within the mind, conveying knowledge without words, warnings without sound. Percy stepped forward, heart pounding with exhilaration. "This is it," he whispered. "The city's heart. Everything it has guarded for centuries lies beyond that archway." Rarely glanced nervously at the walls. "And whatever waits beyond is not entirely human," he murmured. The guardians, the half-human, half-serpent figures, stood silent on either side of the archway. One extended a scaled hand, its eyes burning with intelligence and judgment. "Knowledge and power are intertwined," it intoned. "To claim one is to face the other. Choose wisely, seeker." Percy nodded, courage surging through him. "We are ready." As they passed beneath the arch, the chamber seemed to shift. The floor beneath them hummed, walls shimmering like liquid metal. Visions flickered before their eyes, cities rising and falling, celestial alignments, beings traversing worlds beyond human comprehension. The air thrummed with energy, a living pulse that intertwined with their own hearts. In the very center, a dais awaited. Upon it, a crystalline prism floated, glowing with a light that seemed to contain the essence of time itself. The whispers converged here, forming an almost intelligible rhythm, a cadence that hinted at the city's deepest secret, a power not meant for the unprepared, a legacy of knowledge, danger, and revelation, preserved through centuries for those who dared to seek it. Percy reached forward, and as his fingers neared the prism, the chamber itself seemed to inhale, holding the moment suspended between destiny and oblivion. Percy's fingers hovered over the crystalline prism, its glow pulsing like a heartbeat. As he made contact, the light surged, bathing the chamber in colors more vivid than any natural spectrum. Visions erupted around them, cities rising from the earth, civilizations flourishing and fading, knowledge and wisdom entwined with cautionary tales of hubris. The whispers resolved into near words, a language older than memory, conveying truths rather than sentences. The prism was a repository, a living archive of the LostCityZ, containing the accumulated knowledge, rituals, and understanding of a civilization that had vanished centuries ago. Science and mysticism intertwined. History was encoded not in text, but in energy, in patterns of light and vibration. Rarely staggered backward, shielding his eyes. It's or too much. I can't comprehend it all. Percy's gaze burned with fervor. It is not meant to be understood at once. One must feel it, absorb it slowly, respect it. This is why the city guards itself. Its secrets are alive. Then came the consequence. A tremor shook the chamber. Shadows writhed, figures on the walls stretching, merging with the glowing prism. The guardians stirred, stepping closer, their presence immense and awe-inspiring. The knowledge of the prism was not a gift, it was a test. To touch it without reverence risked being absorbed into the city's consciousness, lost forever as part of its eternal memory. But Percy, resolute, let his mind open, focusing on the patterns, the rhythm of the light, the whispers that now felt like pulses of the city itself. The prism hummed, its energy merging with him, revealing insights about astronomy, the jungle, the stars, and the forces that bound life and death. He understood, at last, that the LostCityZ had not vanished by accident. Its people had transcended mortality, leaving a legacy encoded in stone, shadow, and light. Those who sought it had to prove themselves worthy of its knowledge, not through conquest, but through courage, patience, and respect for the world it had created. The explorers watched, breathless, as the chamber glimmered, alive with the pulse of a civilization that refused to be forgotten. The prism's glow slowly dimmed, leaving the chamber bathed in soft, ethereal light. The whispers faded, leaving a profound silence that pressed upon the explorers like a living thing. Percy stepped back, trembling, not from fear, but from the weight of understanding. The city had revealed itself, but with revelation came responsibility. The knowledge of the LostCityZ was immense, far beyond ordinary comprehension, and those who carried it would never return to the world unchanged. Rarely spoke first, voice heavy with awe. We've seen too much. This isn't just discovery. It's a burden. Percy nodded solemnly. Every great discovery carries a cost. We cannot simply leave it here, but we must carry it carefully. The city's knowledge is alive. It watches, and it judges. The guardians stepped aside, allowing the explorers to move toward the stairway. The path back was the same, yet subtly altered. The jungle outside seemed to pulse in recognition of those who had proven themselves. Shadows no longer lurked with menace, but followed silently, respectful, guiding them toward the surface. As they climbed, the explorers felt the weight of centuries pressing on their minds, the lives of those who built the city, their triumphs, their failures, their sacrifices. Every vine, every stone, every whisper of wind carried memory, and oppressed upon the travelers with gravity they could not escape. Once they emerged into the clearing above, the jungle greeted them with the same chaotic, vibrant life as before, yet something had shifted. Birds cried in unfamiliar harmonies, sunlight fractured into kaleidoscopic rays through the dense canopy, and even the river seemed to murmur secrets. The LostCityZ had not merely revealed its heart, it had imprinted itself upon the explorers, forever altering their perception of the world. Percy looked back toward the ruins, hidden beneath roots and mist. "The city remains," he whispered. "Hidden. Waiting. Alive. And we are its witnesses." The men, exhausted but enlightened, began their descent toward civilization, each step carrying the knowledge and responsibility that only the LostCityZ could bestow. Their journey was far from over. In many ways, it had only just begun. The jungle closed behind them as they descended toward the familiar parts of the outside world. The sun had risen high, casting golden shafts through the canopy, illuminating the explorers' exhausted but determined faces. Every step they took carried the weight of knowledge too vast for any single mind, yet the wonder of discovery lifted their spirits. Percy paused at the edge of a river, gazing back at the hidden hollow where the city slept. The LostCityZ was invisible to all but those daring enough to follow its call, forever concealed, yet alive, breathing through stone, root, and shadow. Its secrets were no longer theirs alone. They had become part of the city's story, witnesses and guardians of a civilization that had transcended time. Rarely broke the silence. Awe and fear mingled in his voice. "Do you think anyone will believe us?" Percy smiled, a mixture of triumph and humility. "Belief matters little. The city endures, whether the world knows of it or not. What matters is that we carry its legacy, and that we honor it with understanding, courage, and respect." As they continued, the jungle seemed to hum in quiet acknowledgement. Birds sang strange, harmonic melodies, sunlight fractured in shifting patterns across the path, and a distant wind carried whispers of the city's creators, welcoming their visitors and acknowledging the courage that had brought them here. The explorers were changed forever. Dreams of treasure and fame had vanished, replaced by a profound reverence for the living memory of a lost civilization. The city's lessons, caution, courage, curiosity, and respect for forces beyond comprehension, were now etched into their souls. And in the deep hollow, the LostCityZ remained alive, hidden beneath roots and stone, a heartbeat of history and mystery, awaiting the next seeker bold enough to follow its call. Percy paused one final time, eyes fixed on the mist-shrouded valley. "The legend continues," he whispered. "Not in books, not in gold, but in those who dare to seek it." The jungle reclaimed its silence, the city hidden once more, yet forever alive in the hearts of those who had walked its stones.